The unmistakable signature style of Chanel. Black and white, clean and modern. The design is also 100 years old. Gabrielle Coco Chanel is herself credited with the clean, unembellished black and white packaging design, originating from 1921. Her focus was elegance and timelessness. Only the essentials were required. There were no superfluous embellishments. The design reflected Chanel's preference for understated simplicity, and has remained a signature element of the Chanel brand ever since. This simplicity across so many elements of branding creates a unifying effect. We see the black and white, the matte card, the interlocking C's, and we know where we are, in a place of luxury and excellence. The design was first applied to the packaging for Chanel No. 5 perfume, a move that broke from the ornate designs of the era. The style of the black and white packaging was inspired by something from Coco Chanel's past. The awning of her boutique in Biarritz, which was white with the name Chanel in black lettering. Chanel considered black and white her own colors. I have said that black had everything, white too. They have an absolute beauty. It is perfect harmony. Dress women in black or white at a ball, they're the only ones you see. The style is so familiar that we have to step away from our preconceptions to understand how radically new it was. The simplicity of the white card boxes with the black edging is starkly austere, and even evokes the style of death notices and mourning stationery. To my mind, the whole scheme is reminiscent of an ultramodern laboratory of the era. Luxury fragrances become elegantly understated. In a further nod to modernity, the white label on the packaging recalls the tracks published by the Dada movement. The name Chanel printed in black sans serif capitals just below the name of the perfume. This was a new manifesto. Here for the first time, a couture house branded itself in an unapologetic way. While Paul Poiret was the first couturier to launch a fragrance line, he chose to name his products Parfums Chanel after his daughter. The subtraction of artifice, craft and prettiness in the presentation of Chanel's fragrances means that opulence is married to stark, hygienic monotone. The striking contrast is brilliant. Chanel's style was a break from the past, and more than 100 years later, it remains crisp and unique. Of the perfectly unembellished bottles she chose for Chanel No. 5, Chanel said, "I have spent my life simplifying things." Her aim was to achieve pure transparency, an invisible bottle. It is said that the bottle design was influenced by the rectangular beveled lines of the Charvet toiletry bottles which, stored in leather travelling cases, were favoured by her lover, Arthur Boyd Capel. In a further reflection of practical modernity, Chanel ordered the austere block-like bottles from Rossa Glassworks, an industrial supplier in Rouen. Chanel's simple interlocking CC logo, also instantly recognizable, was a further creation of Coco Chanel herself in 1925. The logo's origin is said to be the orphanage where Chanel spent part of her childhood. She was inspired by the interlaced curves that she had seen in the glass windows of the Abbaye d'Aubazine, the abbey that housed the orphanage. Chanel was at first skeptical about creating her own fragrances, and it took the persuasive influence of her friend Licia Sert to overcome her objections. Chanel claimed, "I'm a couturier, not a perfumer, and I disapprove of everything perfumers do." Chanel is said to have liked scents that evoked cleanliness and health, and was suspicious that heavily perfumed women were hiding unpleasant odors. Thankfully, Chanel was persuaded, and with a gifted Ernest Beau as partner, Chanel launched her abstract revolutionary anti-perfume No. 5 in 1921. The rest is history. A history so significant that I want to look in depth at that fragrance on a separate occasion. Ernest Beau was born in Moscow in 1881. His family had French origins. His brother Edouard Beau worked at A. Rallet & Co., then the foremost Russian perfume house, and purveyor to the imperial courts. In 1898, Rallet, which had 1,500 employees and 675 products, was sold to the French perfume house Curie. Ernest Beau apprenticed as a laboratory technician in the soap works at A. Rallet. After his obligatory 2 years of military service in France, he returned to Moscow in 1902, where he started with his perfumery training under the guidance of the technical director Lemercier. He finished his perfumery education in 1907, earned a promotion to senior perfumer, and was elected to the board of directors. In 1912, Russia celebrated the centennial of the Battle of Borodino, the turning point in Napoleon's Russian ambitions. For this celebration, Ernest Beau created the fragrance Bouquet de Napoleon, a floral eau de Cologne for Raleigh. It proved to be a major commercial success. Following the Russian Revolution in 1917, Beau, now based in Paris, used his contacts in the Russian nobility to find a new home for his talents. In 1920, with the help of the Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, a companion of Coco Chanel, he arranged a meeting with the couturier in Cannes. He presented his work to Chanel, who chose sample number 5, which contained a high dose of aldehydes, originally as a Christmas present for her best clients. Chanel No. 5 sold so well that the Wertheimer brothers, Pierre and Paul, directors of the perfume house Bourgeois, bought the rights to it from Coco Chanel, creating a new corporate entity, Les Parfums Chanel. The Wertheimers would manage production, marketing, and distribution of Chanel No. 5. They would receive a 70% share of the company, and Théophile Bader, founder of the Paris department store Galeries Lafayette, would receive a 20% share. Bader had been instrumental in brokering the deal by introducing Chanel to Pierre Wertheimer at the Longchamp races in 1922. For 10% of the stock, Chanel licensed her name to Parfums Chanel. She removed herself from involvement in all business operations. Ernest Beau was hired as chief perfumer. In his new position, Ernest Beau created many famous perfumes before he retired in 1954, including Chanel No. 22, Chanel Gardenia, and Soir de Paris. In 1953, Time magazine interviewed Beau. Beau gives each essence the nose test because some scents will last after a week of exposure, while others, for some unknown reason, will last only a few hours. When he is creating a new perfume, he does no sniffing, simply jots down a formula, claims he knows exactly what the final result will smell like. Says Beau, "It's like writing music. Each component has a definite tonal value. I can compose a waltz or a funeral march." Coco Chanel's success as a couturier was not instant. First, she established herself as a milliner before producing innovative designs fashioned in Jersey for resort wear collections. In 1925, her design of the little black dress marked the beginning of her signature style. As the years passed, Chanel began to feel she'd been taken advantage of by the Wertheimers, who continued to pay her a small percentage for each sale of the now phenomenally successful Chanel No. 5. Isolated in Paris during the war, her business temporarily closed, Chanel attempted to use the occupying Nazi regime to seize control of the company from the Jewish Wertheimers. In a further dangerous, reckless move, she fought against her own perfumes, claiming they were no longer of the original quality. She then created a competitive range of fragrances in her own name, for example, Mademoiselle Chanel No. 1 in 1946, which was sold exclusively in her own shops. Mademoiselle Chanel saw red, and perhaps the break from black and white for the new perfumes reflects her anger. In France, a judicial action for counterfeiting prohibited sales of a new range. However, Saks Fifth Avenue in New York and Neiman Marcus in Texas continued to distribute them, and when customers became dismayed, the Wertheimers agreed to increase Coco Chanel's share of the company. Chanel was unaware that the Wertheimers had taken steps to ensure that the quality of Chanel No. 5 would never be compromised. In America, they recruited H. Gregory Thomas as a European emissary for Parfums Chanel. Thomas established reliable sources of the raw materials used to maintain the high quality of Chanel products. The supply of key components, extract of jasmine and tuberose, obtained solely from the fields of the valley of Seine above the French town of Grasse, remained uninterrupted by war. In 1947, the Wertheimers and Chanel made peace, and when Chanel ventured to resurrect her couture house, they even backed her financially. Although Chanel made a fortune from Parfums Chanel throughout her lifetime, she was convinced that the deal had been heavily weighed in favor of the Wertheimers, and that she'd been cheated out of a great deal of money. Interestingly, although the new agreement allowed Coco Chanel to produce fragrances once more on her own, provided none contained the No. 5 in the title, Chanel never again produced fragrances outside Parfums Chanel. Now let's look at two of Beau's magnificent creations for Parfums Chanel. The first, a scent I wore myself for years, Cuir de Russie. Ernest Beau created Cuir de Russie for Chanel in 1924. There had been other Cuir de Russies, notably by Lubin in 1900. The continuing theme of Chanel's work is change and modernism. Beau's Cuir de Russie was the first leather fragrance for women. There are floral notes of orange blossom, rose and ylang, and jasmine blended with bergamot and mandarin. At the centre is a birch mix of leather, iris and stearax. In the United States, the fragrance was sold as Russia leather. Russia leather, Chanel's interpretation of the great outdoors. A sparkling fragrance with a dash of paradox, equally smart with heathery tweed or sequins on black, says an advert in the US in 1941. The Chanel website describes the effect of the perfume. Ambery, dark and musky, scents of balsam, exotic jasmine and birch, an enveloping carnal fragrance lingering with mysterious notes of tobacco, hay and smoky wood. In perfumery, leathery notes are produced from smoky heated birch tar and synthetic isoquinolines. Birch is heated until it becomes dark and pungent. The odors of leather, tobacco and smoke are extracted from the process. Birch bark tar is heated under airtight conditions. The final product consists of tar and the ashes of the bark. As early as the 18th century, birch bark tar oil was used with civet and castoreum to make per de España, Spanish leather. By the turn of the 20th century, birch bark tar had become a specialty fragrance material used as a base note to impart a leathery animalic note. This scent is an opulent mix of flora and fauna. Compared to the very dry and sexual leather of Chanel's Antaeus, Cuir de Russie feels luxurious, with a smoky mellowness of balsams and tobacco. I have here a rather old bottle of X-ray, possibly from the 1940s. The bottle looks closest to the second version of Chanel's classic square bottle, with the slim stopper. This is a revival of the first reformulation from the 1980s or 90s. Finally, here is a bottle of eau de toilette from around 2010. The comparison of the three is very interesting. The most recent version suggests a leather from boxing gloves and new car interiors. There is a caramel buttery iris blend. It reeks of luxury. The 80s-90s perfumes suggest handbags, cigarettes, lipstick, and a hint of cough candy. The odor extrait is phenomenal. There's a smoky burnt rubber bitterness that might have come from the nostrils of Hades. As it settles, it becomes ambery, buttery and delicious. There is much to be said for each version of the scent. It is noticeable and reassuring that the relatively recent version more closely resembles the early mid-century version in the dry down. Notwithstanding the floral element of the fragrance, I find Cuir de Russie to be a very easy fragrance for a man to wear. I would say that this is a scent that you wear rather than one that subtly merges with your body. But then sometimes you just want to smell like an astounding perfume smells. I'll leave the last word to Luca Turin from the Perfumes A to Z Guide. There have been many other fragrances called Cuir de Russie, every one either too sweet or too smoky. This one is the real deal, an undamaged monument of classical perfumery and the purest emanation of luxury ever captured in a bottle. Ernest Beau created Bois d'Azil for Parfums Chanel in 1926. The Chanel website says, Bois d'Azil is a mysterious faraway continent in itself. Indeed, there is mystery in the origins of the fragrance and its ingredients. I've come across the often repeated idea that Ernest Beau drew inspiration for the creation of Bois d'Azil from Tchaikovsky's opera The Queen of Spades. I've also read that Bois d'Azil is a sandalwood fragrance that contains no sandalwood. Let's look at The Queen of Spades first. Taken from Pushkin's story, originally published in 1834, the opera deals with a love affair between a soldier in the Russian army, Hermann, and a young woman, Lisa, who is the ward of the Duchess Ranovskaya. Hermann becomes interested in watching his fellow soldiers gambling at cards. This develops into an obsession when he discovers that the Duchess has the mysterious infallible secret of winning at the card game Faro by betting on 3 particular cards. Hermann takes advantage of his love to gain access to the Duchess. When she refuses to give up her secret, Hermann draws a pistol, and the elderly Duchess dies of fright. In the opera, Lisa kills herself when she realizes that Hermann is not sincere. Hermann is then visited by the Duchess's ghost, who reveals the secret of the card. informing him that he must bet on 3, 7 and the ace. At the casino, Herman makes his bet on the first 2 cards, using every penny he's got. The bets are winners. Then he replaces everything on the ace, and as the card is revealed, it has turned into the Queen of Spades, and he loses everything. Herman too kills himself. I've used images from the wonderful 1949 film version starring Anton Walbrook, Yvonne Mitchell and Edith Evans, which has a slightly different ending. Now for me there's a problem in associating the Queen of Spades with Bois d'Azil. How does one develop a perfume known for its warm, caressing nature, gently radiating the flavour of sandalwood and gingerbread, from a triple tragedy in the snowy Russia of Pushkin-Tchaikovsky's masterpiece? It is questionable that Herman ever truly loves Lisa. He certainly misuses and deceives her. Temptation yielding to avarice and obsession is the master theme of this unromantic, unsettling story. Perhaps the drama of the theme and Tchaikovsky's brilliant music transported Bois and inspired him to create something beautiful. But somehow I doubt it. Something mysterious and subtle may be at play. The people at Chanel have a very different story. The Knights of the Roaring Twenties moved to the beat of jazz and the Java. Inspired by this wave of exotic energy, Coco Chanel launched Bois d'Azil, a sensual and spicy fragrance that transports you to the tranquil unknown waters of distant islands, filled with exotic flowers and opiate scents. Bois d'Azil is a sensual and spicy accord of New Caledonian sandalwood, ylang ylang and tonka bean. So nothing to do with snow and tragedy. This is a very different account indeed. A strange, icy, supernatural story of avarice and obsession versus a jazz-infused exotic dream of abstract island tranquility. Now let's look at the sandalwood mystery. Due to restrictions in the use of Mysore sandalwood from India, a number of reviewers of Bois d'Azil have suggested it's a supreme sandalwood creation that contains no actual sandalwood in its formula. This mystery is easy to clear up. Thanks to the Chanel website, we can see that the list of ingredients contains santalol from New Caledonian sandalwood. Santalol refers to alpha-santalol and beta-santalol, which are organic compounds found naturally in sandalwood. They contribute to the characteristic fragrance to sandalwood essential oil. It's generally agreed that the extracts from New Caledonia are not up to the standard of Mysore sandalwood, so Chanel have no doubt worked hard to rebalance the scent. Bois d'Azil is sometimes thought of as the dark sister of the blonde Chanel No. 5. Both sisters share wonderful bones. They also share several ingredients such as aldehydes, iris, rose and jasmine. Bois d'Azil is less abstract with its heady notes of wood and spice, however. Against modern EU restrictions, Chanel has triumphed in maintaining the magic and excellence of both Cuir de Russie and Bois d'Azil. Ernest Bois created first an ode and love letter to leather, and then did the same thing for sandalwood. The leather is luxury and animal magnetism. Bois d'Azil is caressing as warm animal fur. The vanillic gingerbread and balsamic notes of Bois d'Azil somewhat echo the spiciness of the later Chanel fragrance Coco. The aldehydes provide leavening, infusing a powdery sparkle. The top note of rosy bergamot in Bois d'Azil is flirty, whereas Coco is penetrating, spicy. She definitely means business. Bois d'Azil, like Coco, is wonderfully Christmassy, delicious, comforting, and redolent of an amber glow. Like a warm fire against the cold winter world, they offer solace and magic. Perhaps after all it's the poignant yearning for romantic love, instead of a cool arranged betrothal and the stern rule of the Queen of Spades, that inspired Tchaikovsky and in turn Bois to create works of rare beauty. Bois d'Azil was a favourite of Ernest Bois. In the typical Chanel style, Bois composed a feminine fragrance that emphasized the strength and darkness of woods for the first time. Here is a bottle of the extrait from Les Exclusifs range. There are twinkling aldehydes that brighten the core Chanel florals, iris, rose, ylang and jasmine. Sweetness is balanced by gentle spiciness and dark vanilla tonka bean and a warm amberiness. The dominant sandalwood is tinged with muskiness and the baked goodness of ginger parkin, rather than the blander gingerbread. In the extrait, almost everything hits you at once. It's both comforting and uplifting. This is a bottle of eau de toilette from about 10 years ago. All the elements are there, but it's perhaps a little more flash and blousy. The EDT is dazzling, and like the extrait, it's a pure delight. Bois is a truly wonderful fragrance. Let's turn to a couple of newer creations for Chanel from Jacques Paul, who was head perfumer at Chanel from 1978 to 2015. Chanel No. 18 was created to celebrate Chanel fine jewelry. The story began when Gabrielle Chanel chose Duke Fulco de Verdura, who was working for Chanel as a textile designer, to update her own fine jewelry. Chanel made Fulco head designer at Chanel Jewelry, a post he would hold for 8 years. Together, Chanel and Fulco designed the iconic Maltese cross motif. Maltese cross cuffs became commercially available around 1930 and have remained a mainstay of the Chanel jewelry collection since. In 1932, Chanel began to work on her first and only fine jewelry collection, known as the Bijoux de Diamant. The Chanel website describes the Parisian night sky as an inspiration. The stars, like weightless diamonds, would inspire the foundation of all Chanel hard jewelry. It was while watching them glimmer against the immense night sky that Mademoiselle decided to adorn women's skin and hair with a shower of meteorites, to make crescent moons glow and allow the sun's full radiance to shine. The House of Chanel opened its fine jewelry and watch boutique at 18 Place Vendôme in 1993. To commemorate the event, Chanel released the original Bijoux de Diamant designs alongside their latest collection. Launched in 2007, Chanel says of Paul's creation, No. 18 is a radiant floral fragrance, precious like a fine jewel. Rare ambrette with its jewel-like flowers is at the center of this enchanting bouquet, with fruity sweet notes in trail. No. 18 is a light, woody, floral, fruity fragrance, unique, intensive, and different. Here is a bottle from the exclusive range that dates back from roughly the original 2007 launch. This is a fascinating outlier fragrance. At first, the scent is sparkling, radiant, and effervescent. From the start, I find it strange, intriguing, and anomalous. Rose and iris dominate, but take us to some strange and unusual places. The rose is very high quality, and not at all dusty or fusty. The iris, also high quality, gives a rather odd savoury note among the festival of sparkling flowers, hence we have bread and circuses. There is a persistent tipsy note, which to me smells like nothing so much as tequila. The effect is to make the fragrance feel, if not high as a kite, certainly a little unhinged. The ambrette is airy and radiant, and by this stage you might be reaching for your butterfly net. The flowers, though sweet, never become cloying. The effect is crazy and crystalline. I enjoy No. 18 very much, but it's just so very odd. I can't imagine ever wearing it, however. The ingredients are high quality, but there's something cheeky, almost trashy about it, as though rhinestones and neon are mixed with diamonds. Try it. You might like it. You might be amazed. You might want it. As peculiar as No. 18 is, I still feel as though it's distinctly Chanel. Finally, and in marked contrast, let's look at the classic of its type, Chanel Eau de Cologne, created by Jacques Paul and released as part of the exclusive range in 2007. The first Eau de Cologne, a spirit citrus perfume, had its origins in Cologne in 1709. It was created by Giovanni Maria Farina, an Italian perfume maker. Farina's formula, still produced today, became a sensation, and eventually the expensive concoction became popular amongst all the royal houses of Europe. When free trade was established in Cologne by the French in 1797, the success of Eau de Cologne prompted countless other businessmen to sell their own fragrances under the same name, Eau de Cologne. The concoction was once believed to protect against bubonic plague. By drinking the cologne, the citrus oil scent would exude through the pores, repelling fleas. Safe in the knowledge that defense from bubonic plague is no longer a priority, let's dive in and try the Chanel Eau de Cologne. The first hit is like experiencing a delicious martini garnished by lemon. As the scent settles, the lemon burst increases, balanced by wonderful herbs. For a few hours, this marvelous brew is remarkably bracing and transporting. The lack of sweetness is delicious and very grown up. As you inhale, the world seems better ordered and full of good things. Alas, as with all eau de colognes, you soon start to sober up because these wonders are never long-lasting. This Chanel has the hallmarks of the brand. Everything is high quality. And it does last somewhat longer than most colognes. It leaves a persistent deluxe clean musk on the skin. The evanescent quality of eau de colognes has a sort of appeal, I suppose. Perhaps a gentleman or lady would want to have a very subtle scent after the initial burst of freshness. All the same, at the current price of £390 for 200 ml, it's very easy to picture your pound notes wafting rapidly into the dim and distant as the scent diminishes. Interestingly, Frederic Malle launched Cologne Indélébile, I think with the aim of producing a kind of eau de cologne with real persistence. I found the scent very pleasant indeed, but not especially long-lasting, however. You will come across eau de cologne as a description of a fragrance's strength. For example, this old box contains Chanel No. 5 EDC. This is not a version of the perfume blended with traditional eau de cologne ingredients, citrus, florals, herbs and woods. Eau de cologne here means a less concentrated version of Chanel No. 5. The relative strength of a perfume is delineated as follows: Parfum or extrait above 23% perfume oil, Eau de Parfum 10 to 20%, Eau de Toilette 5 to 15%, Eau de Cologne 2 to 4%, Eau Fraiche 1 to 2%. Obviously, the higher concentrations are stronger, and you can expect them to last longer too. The Eau de Parfums and Eau de Toilettes tend to give more clearly defined top, middle and base notes, while extracts almost give you everything at once, quickly revealing the truest character of a perfume. In men's fragrances, Eau de Toilettes tend to be more fresh and citrus than the Eau de Parfum versions. The difference is clear in Chanel's Pour Monsieur and Guerlain's Habit Rouge. Occasionally only one version of a fragrance is a pure delight. I was never fully won over by Guerlain's Mitsuku. Some element always felt a little bit off until I obtained the extrait, which to me at least is an unalloyed treasure. You will sometimes come across Parfum de Toilette in vintage fragrances. It was popular as a marketing term for a fragrance somewhere between Eau de Parfum and extrait. It was used quite frequently in the 1960s and 70s. In my experience, Parfum de Toilette are worth having. Safe to say there's always a distinct hesperedic, that is citrus element in eau de colognes. If you want the hesperedic note to last longer, why not try one of these? Moustache by Rocha, Lemony, Barbershop, Hermès Concentré d'Orange Verte, Beautiful and Not Sweet Orange, or Acqua di Parma, Colonia Intensa, classic, slightly sweet and agreeable. I can't leave the subject of eau de colognes without mentioning another very classy classic, Eau de Cologne Fraiche from Christian Dior. Notice the black and white box. It was launched in 1952, and it was created by another genius, Edmund Rudnitzer. The EDC is very different here, less bracing and citrus, more floral with notes of verbena, palisander rosewood, jasmine, rose, and a base of oak moss and patchouli. It's a wonderful thing. They're not long-lasting. You can still get vintage bottles quite cheaply. Apparently, it was a sensation among the haute bourgeoisie in Paris during the 50s and 60s. So there. That concludes my look at some favourite Chanel fragrances. I think it would be appropriate to leave with a final word from Mademoiselle Chanel herself. As usual, her opinions are as black and white as her packaging. She said, "A woman who doesn't wear perfume has no future."